So you're having a hearing in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Let's go to the we'll hear about that.
When
we get the update. But I want to use this opportunity to talk about, I think we're getting into the territory where everything's going absolutely insane. And so we have this tweet here which exemplifies it and makes me very happy. Rachel Bay says the officials who represent Maryland's 3 westernmost counties in the General Assembly have asked if their counties can join West Virginia.
Yes.
So a lot of people don't know this.
That's me.
West Virginia and Virginia were one state. Then the Civil War happened and West Virginia and Virginia went bye-bye. West Virginia said, we think slavery is bad. We're with the North. We want to stay in the Union. Virginia said, we're going to be the capital of the Confederacy. Right now, we're starting to see it's getting so bad politically, especially with the story you're telling about the FDA and the risks we have, the censorship, the media. We operate right now. This studio is in one of these counties. I am very excited to hear that this is happening. We have these 2 letters. First, this is from Speaker Roger Hanshaw and President Craig Blair. It says, Speaker Hanshaw and President Blair. Or it's to them, sorry. We, the undersigned state representatives for Garrett and Allegheny counties in the state of Maryland, request that you consider adding us as constituent counties to the state of West Virginia. We believe this arrangement may be mutually beneficial for both states and for our local constituencies. Please advise on next steps. And then, I love this one. Speaker Hanshaw and President Blair. We, the undersigned state representatives for Washington County in the state of Maryland, also request you consider adding Washington County as a constituent county to the state of West Virginia. We believe this arrangement may be mutually beneficial for both states and for our local constituencies. Please advise on next steps. I live in West Virginia because it's a tri-state. We shop sometimes in Virginia. We go for dinner. I live in West Virginia, but we work in Maryland, so we're just between all 3. Delegate Mike McKay and Delegate William Wivel, we are here as our eager constituents wanting to help in any way possible to allow us to join with West Virginia. Look, so West Virginia, I live there. I'm a resident. I have constitutional carry. It's fantastic. It's way better. Maryland is Western Maryland where we are. It's effectively West Virginia. If you ask anybody
Very
around here,
yeah.
There's a guy who lives over here. He's got these massive signs that say like swamp 40 miles that way. It's pointing DC. Says bring your boots. Amazing sign, by the way. And the people here would love it to not be under the boot of Baltimore.
Oh, yeah. Culturally, socially, economically, politically. I mean, they're right in the middle of the place that triggered the last Civil War. I mean, Harper's Ferry sits right on the end of the old John Brown. So so it makes sense. And what has to happen is the Maryland, West Virginia and Maryland legislatures have to approve, and then Congress has to approve.
Never going to happen.
Probably not, but maybe, because if you're Maryland, do you really want Western Maryland? If you're the Democrats in Baltimore, you probably would love to jettison them.
Yeah,
you're West Virginia, why not add your territory, add some tax base?
You'll get a Democrat governor every time if you get rid of Western
The only thing is probably they would look at congressional representation. Would it give West Virginia enough to add back their 3rd seat that they lost?
Yeah, no.
Hypothetically, this ever happens, what's the time frame? How long would that?
Oh, it can happen quickly. I mean, it requires both legislatures and Congress. It can happen the old days they used to approve states within weeks, within months.
Yeah. So what do we have to do to encourage this?
That's a good question. I mean, I wouldn't encourage anything, that too provocative.
Well, look, this is just people saying we're not like the people of DC and Baltimore. Right. We're more like West Virginia. So,
well, just convince the people in DC and Baltimore that Western Maryland is really holding them back. They just need to jettison them and give them to West Virginia.
It's a good point. You don't want to have these maggots, voting in your elections. Yeah. Maryland's got a Republican governor.
Exactly. It would be a Democratic governor if they would just let these counties go.
That's right. But I don't think they would. It's a lot like what's happening in Oregon. The eastern Oregon counties are also...
they want out.
They voted, right? They voted too.
Eastern Washington wants out.
Yep.
They would like to join Greater Idaho, make Idaho like a true Idaho.
It's funny having grown up my whole life in a city and then lived in New York and then ultimately just being like, it's better to not live in these cities because they're insane.
Yeah.
It is funny. I drove through New York to get here, had coffee with my best friend in New York. And it was I know my frame of the world has changed with what's happened in the last 2 years, but it was the first time I really appreciated, I forget who said it, that living in a big city is like prisoners sort of learning to love their imprisonment. And, we're in New York. I see people in the park playing violin. I see people, everyone's talking, everyone's trying to make the best of life in New York. But it was the first time that it really felt like the city was too much. It looked like people were just trying to make the best of their living, but that people didn't really love it anymore. But that might have been a lot of projection coming from me.
Did you stop in New York City?
Yeah, New York City proper. It was in Lower East Side.
I grew up in New York City.
Did you need to present your papers to get that coffee?
I did not. I didn't because we drank it outside. Everybody,
So
I said on my channel, I got both shots. Everyone knows because I've crossed the border. But I refuse. I mean, except for bowling with my kids. Where's the camera that I have to apologize to again? Except for bowling with my kids that one day, I refuse to do it. But I don't eat out anymore.
Do you have like a card? Like
no, I have a picture of my paper. Literally, the funny thing is, after I got my second shot, I took a picture of the paper they printed out at the pharmacy, sent it to my wife with a very funny joke, like, haha, the papers when they ask. And it became a very funny email that I sent to my wife, because they literally, when we were traveling to New Brunswick, they like, show me your papers. I had only had one shot at the time. I was like, man, they're gonna tell me I can't go on a family vacation now.
That's ridiculous.
This is so draconian. This is the crazy thing to me. I mean, and that would work in New York City.
It's working. It's working. Every sign said you want to sit down indoors, vaccine passport.
No, I mean the fact that you've got a picture of a piece of paper, and that's like, okay.
So what's stopping people from,
Oh, there's massive already in New York.
I have had. I mean, I will never do it because I don't trust it not to get hacked in terms of like disclosed to the authorities. But I know people who are providing.
Personally, I know nobody. I have no idea.
That's right. I don't know.
I take it back. I know nobody, but like I said,
but there's a high probability that there are a lot of these people, and that's why these numbers of how many people actually took this or have this should be questioned.
I don't represent any of them, so
what if someone like went to Mexico and then just went to a doctor?
Well, that's the key, is that you get international. That's what they can't control. That's what there's no U.S. tracking for. That's why ultimately the goal is to have international tracking. Have a little chip in your body that everybody can be universal.
They already got a chip in your passport.
The World Economic Forum called for a global passport system of medical records that keep you up to date with your status and your tests that will be used with internationally, with all the countries being synced into the same system. That's literally what they were just talking about months ago. So this has been planned for a very long time.
Part of your financial system. Yep. That's why they're talking about FedCoin. That's going to be part of your identification.
Yeah, the Bank of England. The Bank of England is literally talking about building a cryptocurrency that's centralized, controlled by them. Just after a few days ago, one of their spokespersons said that Bitcoin's going to destroy the financial markets, as they're calling for their own Bitcoin. That's FedCoin, controlled by them at every level.
Well, imagine the control. They could cut off your ability to buy gas, buy food, do anything.
And that's literally their plan. That's the social credit score. It's already exists in China, and there's plans to implement it here in the United States through the vaccine mandate, through the vaccine passports. It's a social credit score in a Trojan horse.
They'll experiment on Canada first.
Well, and I just don't understand the rationale behind the vaccine passport. You can go in, order your coffee, then leave, but you can't sit down in there to drink your coffee, as if the double vaccination is the criteria that's the most relevant, and not if you're worried about transmission, a negative test. But it's nuts. But people are putting up with it in Canada. In New York, there's a little more defiance.
So I can explain it. It's actually quite simple. So if you walk into a restaurant, you need to wear your mask, because for people, walking around, the COVID is at head level. But when you sit down, now you can take your mask off. Everything's okay. Now, however, if you're not vaccinated, it actually inverts. You're okay standing up, walking in, but sitting down is when you get problems.
No, not anymore. They changed that rule. You have to, even if you're vaccinated, still wear the masks. And in Australia, this virus usually goes to sleep at around 8 p.m. when the government says that there's a curfew. So this is
that's when it's most active.
And also very strangely, hold on.
It's
also a super spreader event when it comes to Republican protest, but it's something that heals people during leftist Black Lives Matter protests.
It's a woke virus.
At 8 p.m. is when it's most active. That's why everyone has to stay home.
Unless you're Joe Biden, and then you don't even have to wear the mask and you go into a high-end restaurant.
Well, everybody knows that Joe Biden is the healthiest president we've ever had.
Exactly. Very much so.
Fit as a fiddle.
Yeah, yes.
I'll one up the insanity. Did I talk about the isolating kids in Canada?
No,
because we got an email from school. I did a video on this because I didn't believe it was true. Where out of Ontario, they were saying if a kid came in contact with someone who tested positive, that kid has to isolate. And then you saw people tweeting online, my kid's crying in the bedroom, I'm slipping food under the door with the...
I saw that.
Yeah. Okay.
So bad.
And now, I don't know if I believe those tweets, because you have to be a little skeptical. But then we, in our community, got a recommendation. 8-year-old kids in a class came in contact with a kid who tested positive. All kids were asymptomatic, if they were even infected, but they tested negative. No symptoms, negative test, had to isolate for 10 days. And I expressed some discontent with the government policy, say this is idiotic. And then total coincidence. The next day, the government issues a correction. No longer need to isolate an 8-year-old kid who's tested negative with no symptoms. It is. I don't know what they're doing. Like there's that guy Awaken with JP who puts out some good videos.
Yeah.
This is what we do today. Throw something on the wall. That's going to be the criteria.
It's the problem with all these vaccine mandates. All of them are about asymptomatic risk. I mean, there is no real risk. The only limitation the vaccine mandate lawsuits that they should expand upon is asymptomatic risk is not a meaningful risk of spread. Yeah. And that's the only thing the vaccine purports to solve, and it doesn't solve by its own admission.
Allegedly.
Yeah,
Again,
exactly.
and all the data should be questioned because all the data is coming from Pfizer, and Pfizer has been caught fudging the data, fudging the trials, kicking people out of trials that get sick from the vaccine, like that 12-year-old that ended up in a wheelchair, and then she was a part of the trial group, and when the trial group or the report came out, she wasn't a part of it.
I can't go into details, but there'll be a big whistleblower coming out on that precise topic in the next 2 weeks.
It's crazy what's happening.
We got to be careful with anecdotes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As far as
no, I represent a whistleblower who will be.
No, that's different.
Yeah,
that's different. I just mean like my concern is someone will see a story and they'll say this proves my view of the situation, and I'm like,
there's tons of that, of course.
Right. And causation, correlation. Anecdotes prove nothing except that you have an example. But I just love the fact that everybody now trusts Pfizer, who paid
$2.3 billion.
$2.3 billion. They trust Merck, who paid however much for hiding
Johnson
the fact
and Johnson.
And they trust the government.
There's a little baby talc.
In Canada, the government just apologized for its horrible treatment of the Indigenous with its residential schools. We did it for their own good at the time, or we said we did.
Yes.
We knew they were dying. We hid it. Now we apologize for it. Trust us today.
Did you guys hear this Johnson and Johnson thing? I think it's the talcum powder, right? They're separating it off they're spinning off a new company and then bankrupting it, so they don't got to pay a settlement.
Exactly.
It's hilarious to see that in leftist subreddits where they're like evil corporation, but then also like, haha, MAGAs are dumb for not getting vaccinated.
Yes.
It's atrocious.
Completely. And the cases that they're citing are the cases that were used for eugenics in the 19th and 20th century. So it's very dangerous what's happening legally, politically, across the board. And
people, I want to stress this point too, because people often say when we had Michael Schellenberg, for instance, he's like, what about when people say we've had other mandates like MMR and stuff? And I'm like, I've never been required to get a vaccine to go to 7-Eleven before.
Exactly. Not only that, there's always been religious accommodations for all those child vaccines. There's always been medical accommodations. There's always been prior immunity accommodations. So we've never had it. And again, those, as you note, were limited to kids for public education for which you could opt out. So it's a completely unanalogous comparison that a lot of these people are using.
The virus itself is not analogous either because measles, mumps, rubella actually posed a meaningful risk for kids.
Right.
We're talking now in Canada, compelled vaccination of 5 to 11-year-olds in Canada, 300,000 some odd cases, 1,500 hospitalizations, 15 deaths. And we just found out 2 weeks ago, at the very least on this occasion, a death they reported in a 14-year-old attributed to COVID. The sister came out and said the kid had stage 4 brain cancer, was hospitalized and in a coma, and they did a test on the kid.
But there's two words here, vaccine mandate, and the most important is mandate. Like University of Denver saying flu vaccines. This is, I think, just the bigger issue, I think, is they want to get people to mandate. They want to get to the point where you have the app where they can start mandating many, many more things than just vaccination. They can mandate any kind of medical procedure.
Well, it goes back to the eugenics era. Right. The whole goal was to establish the state's power and the corporate power over the human body, that they control you, you don't control yourself. Once they established that legal precedent, we know where it leads because they gave us forced sterilization and forced detention camps based on ancestry and then ultimately the Nazis. And
there was a lot of really messed up stuff happening in the early 1900s.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what, and when they cite those cases, I'm like, do you recognize you're citing the same Supreme Court that said racial segregation was a good idea?
Well, to be fair though, Derek Bell agreed with Plessy versus Ferguson, and he's like a hero to the wokeists. So
yeah, I mean the levels of insanity. I mean, it's the professional class has too much power. That's the problem.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Now, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.